everybody. It's Tuesday.
And welcome to this week's edition of Hook, Line, and Striker.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Emily. And thanks for being here with us tonight. We have had actually a really exciting last few days. Usually we start the show off with a fishing report, but we actually took our weekend and we went to the Dakota Angler Ice Institute all the way in Sioux Falls.
Yeah, that was a really fun trip. Got to talk to you get to talk to a lot of neat people. There's people that drive almost all the way from the coast sometimes to get there. So the West Coast, that is, all the way to the central United States. So that's a really fun show.
Well, and where we are in Wisconsin, it's only about a 7-hour drive, but I always find it being very worth it to get out there because, there is a lot of product to be had there. And boy, did it fly off the shelves this past weekend.
We were there all day Friday from, 3 to 9 or something. And in that 6 hours or whatever it was, all the Garmin Panoptix units almost sold. And there was only one left on Saturday, which was amazing. It was like 6 hours and there was like $30,000 worth of electronics gone. Crazy.
But that's something that we've kind of been talking about, honestly, for a little bit now, and it's not an I told you so moment, but it is a warning that, there's a lot of products that are going to be snapped up quick this year because there was people at the end of last year that were still kind of looking for things. We're here. You might be thinking striker gear. I mean, there's a lot certainly to go around. So place your orders. But I think, we're talking even industry wide. So if you're looking at jigs or heaters or shacks or whatever it is for the coming year, this is the time to start looking for that, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So if anybody does have questions about the expos or different, striker products, feel free to leave that in the comments there because that's something that we will talk about.
Also, if you want to try and stump Shane, that's always welcome too.
But also a quick reminder that, this coming weekend, there will be striker products at the Blaine, Minnesota Hardwater Expo.
Yes.
And so, definitely go and check that out too.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right, though. It looks like quite a few people are looking forward to talking to Shane. So let's bring him into the show. And Shane, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Shane.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So it looks like quite a few people do know you and are familiar with you. But if there's anybody here who maybe they're just meeting you now, can you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm a fishing guide out here in Southwest Wyoming. So I'm on pro staff with a few companies as well. Striker, Frable, Plano, Pure Fishing. So all the Abu products, stuff like that. Dynamic lures. But my passion is fishing. Did 8 years in the military, got out, worked with Cabela's Masters Walleye Circuit and the Cabela's North American Bass Circuit as a tournament director. And it also did high school fishing stuff. And then essentially been living out here in Wyoming for the last 5 years now, just doing big lake trout, kokanee salmon, and just exploring the West.
That's actually really exciting. And I've got to say, you are one of the pages that I do love following so much because, watching is just like fish after fish. Well, like big fish after big fish after big fish.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And, I have a lot of great friends. Some of them are kind of chiming in here. And I think that's an important aspect, of fishing these days that people kind of overlook. Everybody's chasing that sponsor or that discount. But I mean, honestly, if you have a good group of friends, you'll kind of see the quality of fish that you'll see on, our pages, some of my friends' pages. We all just talk and work together, and that's really what the fishing community should be about. So, hey, thanks, guys.
I'm sitting here reading the comments because there is
not put up here.
So I mean, I guess maybe this is I don't mean this to be a hard question, but what is it about your trips that everybody is loving so much? Is it just the experience of catching fish, or is it more than that?
Well, I mean, they get to have a personal comedian as well as a fishing guide while they're out there. So I get pretty animated. A lot of guys have come out with me. I kind of warn them beforehand. I'm like, hey, I'm not yelling at you guys. I get excited, and that stems back from the military. But I just get excited. I don't want somebody to lose a big fish. And the funnest thing about being a guide, minus the boat breaking down and all that other fun stuff we get to deal with, but is getting to meet different people and then sharing that passion of fishing with people. And that's kind of what I keep in mind is, well, I may think, it's just another 20 pounder. For somebody that's the biggest fish that they've caught, and so that's, yeah. But, I also remember, not that long ago, 7-10 years ago, I was on the flip side of that where I was getting into lake trout fishing, and I had a really good opportunity to learn from some guys who have been, in the business for a very long time. And it goes back to having that group of friends where we all talk, we're all trying different things. If we find something that works, we share that with each other in that close group, and that ultimately helps us become better anglers. And so that's one thing I share with clients is, hey, well, I appreciate you're excited to come fishing with me. I don't know everything. You may bring something to the table, or I might be like, hey, we should try that, or that could work. And then so I learned something new. So essentially, I'm out there learning every day, and that's what really makes it exciting. Is just because when you think what the fish are doing, they remind you very quickly that they're still in charge. So, but I've been very fortunate, especially this last season. I think I ended with 39 trips in a row with at least one fish 20 pounds or bigger, doing lake trout trips. So some days are grind, and other days it's first 5 minutes, boom, 30-pound fish, and then the weight of the world is lifted off my shoulders when that happens. But yeah, I've been very fortunate. I've had a lot of really great clients, some that have become friends, and so it's been really good and rewarding.
Man, I just love hearing you talk about that, because one of the things that is so important, one of the things that we love so much is, sharing that fishing community. And it is a community. And I think so often, we hear this, talking to some of our striker staff, but, I think sometimes people get out onto their lakes and they run into, the guy who's protective of his spot, or like the launch that something's not right, or, whatever. And, to be able to share with somebody and go out there. But I even love your perspective, like as the guide, that you might even learn something from somebody else, because, I've met a lot of stubborn guides, but I just think that's a really cool thing.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a couple guys, that it's entertaining because, they pay to come out with you. And then the first thing have you ever, well, I do this. Should we? And I'm like, well, we can try that if fishing stays slow, but this is kind of what works here. But I think that's what really separates, good fishermen from great fishermen, is keeping that open mind, and just, having a little bit of that humble aspect. The whole, spot stuff. There is certain stuff where, a lot of people do message me and ask me for stuff, and I try to give, some basic information. On the flip side, it is also, my career and my living, so I'm not going to give all the information out. But when I do live shows like this, I like to talk about the basics. I like to talk about, conservation. A lot of people don't know, these big lake trout. And, I see Jay asked what my biggest lake trout is. And so far it's 42 pounds is my personal biggest one. The biggest one on the boat has been 45 pounds this year. So I've had quite a few fish over 40 pounds this year on the boat. I'd say around five or so over a lot of 35 to 39 pound fish. I don't know how many fish we caught, 39 and a half pounds, 39, like 2 ounces shy of 40 pounds, and it's like, man, we're so close. But a fish that big is going to be anywhere from 30 to 50 years old. So a lot of people that, fish lake trout don't understand that, or realize that, they catch a big fish. Hey, let's keep it. Let's get it mounted. And, I just kind of calm them down and just say, hey, like this fish is probably, depending how old they are, it's older than you. Let's put this one back. We'll get good measurements, pictures, all that fun stuff. But that's another important aspect with these trophy fish, Yeah. Yeah, I need a bigger live well. Yeah.
Tobin.
That's funny. Also, they make some really seriously fabulous replicas these days.
They do. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I think if I go back up here, I think Jay also asked what my favorite rod and reel setup is. I have my spinning rod here. So this is a custom lake trout rod. So this is a 40, I want to say a 45. I want to say it's a 45-inch custom. So I actually have a buddy in Denver, Jeff Fetters, who custom makes rods. So he can do anything you want. But this is one of my favorite rods. It's got carbon fiber handle and stuff on it. And so this is a 6-inch CJ Customs tube that I use, and you'll see that there's hooks on each end. And so there's a pretty specific reason for that. And you'll notice on any when you're jigging for lake trout, the bite is going to be usually from here to the head. So they're going to come and they always attack where the gills are of fish. So a lot of times you'll catch kokanee, other stuff like that, and you'll see these. They almost look like talon marks, but those lake trout will come up and try to eat them. And they always try to get in the gills, so that it injures the fish or it stuns them. But that's kind of why I like having this hook up in the front, because when you get that bite and set that hook right there is usually going to be in the lip. And then this one on the back is usually for when I'm pulling away from fish and they come and a lot of times they'll come hit from the back. It's almost like Jaws. I've fished a couple fish where we get a 20-pounder that hits right below the ice, and all you see is this white mouth coming straight up, just like Jaws. It's pretty cool.
Oh my gosh. That's actually a really interesting thing to think about, because for so many anglers out there, we're dying to have that moment, but especially as a guide, you also deal with people who have never seen that before, and to try to teach somebody to not like jerk away from that moment, or, for you to not experience that yourself. I mean, that is a crazy situation.
And I will tell you one thing that may shock you too, is these 30-pound fish will bite like a crappie. It blows people away. They're like, I think I got a bite, but it just felt like a little tiny tick. And I'm like, yeah, you missed a big fish. They're like, really? I'm like, yeah, it's very hard because, lake trout, their mouths are almost like a hard cartilage. So when you pop that hook in there, with a lot of fish, you set that hook and then all of a sudden you're way up here. And then instinctively, you don't even think about it, but you drop that rod tip. And what happens is, get this sucker out. As soon as you do that, that pressure comes right out, and that your bait just falls right out. But the spinning reel I have on here, this is a Revo X30. So this is one of my favorite spinning reels. A very smooth drag. So with these big fish, you want something that's going to have a smooth drag. You want a higher end rod, because you will burn. You will burn some of these drags up, with those $30, $40 reels. This is I think they're on sale right now for about $100. And then I have a bait casting version too, custom rods. And I like to use the Abu Zeta bait caster. Super, super smooth drag. I believe it has a 20 or 25-pound drag, which is what you want for these big fish, because you'll have that drag tightened down and they'll still pull on you. I had the biggest one we got through the ice last year was just shy of 40 pounds. And when I initially hooked it about spooled me twice on the bait caster. I had about 3 wraps left on my backing, and I just kind of put my thumb and closed my eyes and just repeated in my head, like, please don't break, please don't break. And it was like a train. It just slowly stopped and turned. But that was such a great fish, and I actually sight fished that fish in 10 feet of water, so it was even more cool. So that's one of my spots where, you know, I was shown that spot years ago, and so I don't take very many people there unless I know them really well, just because it is a very special thing to catch a 30 or 40 pound fish, you know, in that shallow water. But
that's really cool. So with a situation that's kind of like that intense, if I can call it that, you know, there's some questions here about your favorite jig size and also line.
Yeah, so that was the next thing I was going to get into. I've been using a lot of the Berkeley X9 braid. For these big fish, I use 30-pound braid, and then usually 15 to 20-pound leader, depending on the size of the jig that I'm using. Now, you guys see on here, this is the 6-inch tube that I use. And what you'll notice about this, what kind of makes this different than, well, it's missing a little fin, but I'll show you on this other one.
Oh, that's cute.
These tubes are super cool. Because, you know, some of the older guys watching, you know, airplane jigs used to be really big for lake trout and stuff like that. Well, this is a tube and an airplane jig, like if they had a kid, I guess. So when you pop this, a really short, quick pop, when you come up and it goes down onto the ground like this, when you lift it up, that bait's going to scoot around like that. And these fish go absolutely nuts over these baits. But you can see I have, you know, a couple various different sizes, and that's essentially just for different times of the year. So right now the fish are kind of keying in on about this size of bait or smaller, just because the kokanee got done spawning, the carp spawned. So a lot of the kokanee fry aren't really a thing yet, but you know, the carp fry and the bass, something like that, they're going to be about this size. Stalker rainbows, you know, are going to be this 7-inch size or this 4-inch size. So it's kind of like fly fishing, right? You match the hatch.
Yeah.
So those are kind of the things that you look at. If I'm targeting small fish, some cool stuff that I like to use this is called the Sneak Attack by Dynamic Lures. And so it's just essentially all it is a little paddle tail grub. This one's a glow. It's a glow or white. You can't go wrong lake trout fishing, glow or white. So you'll see, like, I have these Yamamoto curly tail grubs too. They're glow or white. And same thing with these Kitex. You know, a lot of guys use them for walleye and stuff. But yeah, they love action. So, you know, I can get into real quick kind of, if we want to go in depth, we can start with, you know, what I look for lake trout, then go to baits and certain stuff like that. We can dive right in, or we can see what people are talking about.
Well, let's do a little bit of both. So there was a check-in for your 10-inch bait. So just funny that was one that you didn't mention. It's hard for me to think of using something that big under the ice when you're catching fish that big.
I'll be right back. Let me go grab it.
All right. Okay. You know, and with that being said, we do love to get to everybody's questions and comments and all the things that you guys are thinking. So, you know,
keep throwing them up there.
Yeah. If you've got things, put it up there. Plus, if you are in one of those regions that is starting to get skim ice, post that up, because I'm going to come visit. I'm interested in where that's at. And remember, you know, get a spud bar. You don't have to throw rocks out there. So we all
That's a 12-inch. That's a 12-inch bait right there. So that big fish I actually caught on this, and last year this was a prototype. This was a prototype bait. Sorry, I get excited with this thing because it's so cool. It's like if a swim bait and a tube had a kid. It's super cool. You can see the hook slot comes up on the top there. But this sucker, when you jig it, it looks like a dying fish. And that's what I caught that big fish on. I had just done a couple pops in the bottom, and I was letting it sit like this. And what's really cool about these big lake trout is they'll either be super aggressive or they'll do what this one did, which is, this is literally how fast it came. And it was like in super slow motion, but yeah, this is called the fish tube. It's a super cool bait. And so I do all kinds of wacky stuff, trolling, trying different stuff. Just like I said, a bunch of my buddies we're always trying to reinvent the wheel, with stuff, and you get some pretty comical stuff. I have, believe it or not, and that's what gets me going. A lot of times, you show guys like a 4 or 5 inch jerk bait, and you're rainbow fishing or something, and they'll be like, well, that's too big for a trout. And I'm like, no, like I've literally caught fish the same size as that bait trolling. And it drives you nuts because you'll be trolling boards. And I do that a lot for trout out here and lake trout. And you'll be like, oh man, this feels like a good fish. No, it like bit it so hard that one hook is in its head and the other one's on its side. So it's spinning sideways. I feel so bad, but anyway.
Yeah. So you're sharing these stories, like you are able to watch these bites and these fish. So is this something that you are like getting on film?
I need to be. I used to be a lot better doing film stuff while I was out ice fishing. I do use live scope, and it's hard sometimes when you're out there trying to help people that are learning and trying to film. Or being like, hey, can you film this real quick? And then you do the whole 5-minute spiel and there's a finger across the screen, So my goal this ice season is to try to get some guys out, and everybody wants to be the fisherman, but no one wants to be the cameraman. So I'm going to try to get some guys out. I'm going to try to do like a beginner's guide to lake trout fishing, very basic stuff. And so we can kind of do like a what I like to call a 35,000 foot view on that tonight. But yeah, it's I see some of the questions about live scope on the ice, and yeah, I have 2 live scope units now. I use it on my boat for trolling, and it is a lot of these guys that are commenting have come out with me. I see Dustin's on here, Chris, and Travis, a couple other guys that have been out with me. But it's just as entertaining and frustrating watching live scope, because these lake trout love to do, your bait will be up here and these lake trout will go right back down. So they'll come up 30, 40 feet shooting up, and you're like, oh, here we go. And it's like they get about a foot and they're just like, nah, and they go right back down. So it's exciting because you get so used to watching that. And I tell people when it's a slow bite like that, I'm like, you know what? As soon as you see a fish and you're just like, yeah, whatever, it's going to slam your bait. And I've took out a couple local guys a couple weeks ago from a giveaway trip I did last year. And they were just like, they're like, whack. And I'm like, what happened? They're like, yeah, I just got hit. I was like, yeah, one was eating a sandwich, I think. So that's usually what to do. So if you're not catching anything, it's time to break into one of my buddies, Matt. We like to joke around with each other. We have our fat kid snacks. So, little Debbie's, stuff like that. So, break into a snack. And as soon as you open that wrapper, if there's a fish down there, it's going to come bite. I guarantee it.
It's amazing because that works with crappies in my boat too.
Yep.
That's so funny. Going backwards a little bit, the other thing that, I was asking about if you were filming things, but I think also there was a question about like if you do underwater, but I'm also now seeing that behind you have an aqua view. So I imagine, is that something that you're using ice fishing for trout, or is there too much depth in the water to work with?
I used to till live scope came out.
Okay.
And I used to use aqua view even at 100 feet down. That 10-inch aqua view is amazing. 100 feet down. So if there's guys out there looking, it's pricey. I think it's about $1,100, but it's worth it because if you can see it, put that camera down 100 feet, you can see what these fish are literally doing or not doing. I remember one time, like my battery died, so I went and got a different battery, plugged it in. And I'm not I think I screamed. I don't know what, but as I turned that screen on, and it was like a scary movie. There was like a 30-pound lake trout staring right at my bait on the camera. I wasn't expecting to see that, because and I'll get into that in a little bit, but my flasher at the time, this was before LiveScope, told me there was nothing down there. I turn on the camera, and there's this, I'm like, we're like eye to eye, and was not expecting it. But that is, that's one thing with LiveScope, I don't know how many times, even on my boat where my fish finder, there's nothing down there. LiveScope, there's fish, and if I'm trolling 4 rods at one time, I can tell you which rod is going to get hit. Wow. It's so cool. I'm like, oh, watch this rod on the left, the top one, bam. Especially salmon fishing out here. But yeah, having a camera is good, and that's how I initially learned a lot. Was I put that camera down there and I would just record, and I would fish, and I would watch it, see how the fish. But then when I got home, it's like, NFL players watching tape. I went back, watched my tape. Like, I learned so much just filming me, like bad habits that I had, high hook sets, stuff like that, just by filming yourself and going back and watching film and watching how fish react to your bait different ways to different presentations. It kind of helps you hone in and remember things. And then I have a little black book. This is a trick that my grandpa told me when I was like 6 years old, when he yelled at me for fishing with gloves on. I won't forget that either. So, he has a little black book that he keeps track of everything. You go out fishing that day, what's the wind, barometric pressure, what baits we're working, cloudy, sunny. And what I found is if you fish a lake or bodies of water and you have about 3 years of data, you can start getting a pattern down. So, and that's one thing that's helpful. It's a lot of work, but like with anything, the more work you put into it, typically the more you're going to get out of it. And that's one thing I learned in the military is attention to detail. And I think that helped me become a much better fisherman. I like a challenge. So,
it's a little bit like inspiring, I guess, that you have that book that you can go back and look to, because multiple times I've had the intentions of sitting down and making my, I have a notebook. It's in my tackle box, and I'm just not good at filling that in. But like you're saying, that attention to detail will take you so far in catching fish. So that's a really cool thing, especially somebody that gets to fish as often as you do.
Yeah. Yeah, my boat has definitely told me how much I've been out in the water this year. So,
well, and something just even a little bit easier, kind of easier way into detailed notes is a lot of people use their phones to take pictures of fish. One of the things that I started doing is taking a picture of my graph and having maybe the sky and like partial sky in the background, so I can kind of know what lake I was on. I can know the water temperature, I can know the conditions because you can see the sky. And then all the pictures after that for that day kind of show up. And that's a really quick and easy way to like go back and look, for future reference, without having to like try and sit down and write everything down.
Yep. Yeah. And I think there's a couple apps too that you can mark where you caught a fish, the depth. I can't think of I think it might be Angler. I know last year Abu came out with a rod on the butt. You could press a button. The name of it's slipping my mind, but it hooked up to the app. So you could literally hit the button on there and it would save the data for you.
Oh,
interesting. Actually, I've not heard of that yet.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen actually that rod came out last year and I didn't really see it a whole lot. So I don't know if it was just a one and done or what. Travis wants to borrow my black book. He'll cost
yeah.
He's been out with me. he was the first open water trip I did last year. And I can't remember, Travis, was your fish? I think it was 44 or 44 and a half inches.
Whew.
And we thought for sure, that this thing came up. And if you watch my live shows that I have on Recon Angling, you'll watch the intro and you'll see like this behemoth lake trout swimming away. And that's the fish that he caught with me. We were sitting there like, there's no way this fish is not over 40 pounds. And it was 39 and a half. I mean, it was just a monster, like a monstrous fish.
You got mad at my hook set.
I did it was a bad hook set, but he still got it done. And I think the gentleman that came out, he taught me a new knot for tying line together. So that goes back to learning new things. I think it was the FG knot, and it's very intricate.
So I'm a little bit interested in that knot, but I've also got to ask while we're still there, what goes into a good hook set?
Well, so I like to tell people you always want to keep your rod tip down. So what that looks like, and I'll try to demonstrate it here, is, a lot of guys, when this rod's too long, I should have grabbed them. I'm trying to look because usually I have a couple ice rods, but I just moved them. So usually when you're lake trout fishing, you want your rod angled down like this. And the reason for that is when you set the hook, you're going to end up right here. Now, if you're right here and you set the hook, you're up here, and that goes back to your mind instinctively wanting you to drop your rod tip. So the most important thing is if you end up here, just reel a little bit faster than you normally would on your way down to keep the tension, on there. But when we were slow trolling like I was with him, it's almost like playing baseball. A lot of guys, that played baseball understand what squish the bug means. So you got to have your rod tip like this down. And then I have this hand here kind of out a little bit, and this hand is down. So when that fish bites, I sweep and suck. I suck this in, and I sweep forward with my hip and then reel down. And that's, when you think about it, when you're trolling like this, it's what we call a negative bite, because those fish are coming up and lifting. So if they're coming up and hitting it from the side, and you lift it and you set the hook straight up, it's going to pop out. But if they come like this and you hook straight in, it's going to drive that bait into the roof of the mouth better. If you're vertically jigging, you want to do that quick. I call it the old tomahawk, kind of up like this. Nice, short, should only be about 6 inches, maybe a foot on that hook set. If you go any higher than that, you're probably going to miss it. And with lake trout, I'll kind of show you on this. Knocking lights over here. So you can see how that line is tight, right? So a lot of times when these big fish come, just like a crappie, they'll suck it in. So you'll see your line. See that? See how that line sags? You want to set the hook when that happens and not wait for the bite, because when you feel that bite 9 out of 10 times, that's the fish spitting that tube out, and you're feeling it hit the roof of the mouth as they come out. So I always tell people, you see that line is tight like that. When you see it, oh, now I messed it up. But when you see it kind of curl like that, or just have slack in your line, that when you're lake trout fishing anyway, that's when you want to pop that hook set.
That's a really great tip, because, I've heard all kinds of things about, fishing trout, but, I always hear like, wait until they're ripping it out, but, if this is a more finesse situation, that's really good, interesting information that can really help people.
Yeah. Well, then there's a difference between trout, like rainbows, browns, and then lake trout. When you're trout fishing, a lot of people do because they'll come and they'll kind of taste it. Right, like rainbows, they'll come nibble it, and then they'll come around and come back, and that's usually when they take it. Sometimes they'll come in and just inhale it. And last year we were up in western Idaho fishing Henry's Lake, and you can use dead minnows up there. And my buddy that grew up there, they use, a lot of people up there use like whole 6 to 9 inch minnows to catch 20-inch brook trout. I mean, and I was like, that seems a little extreme. but we were fishing in 3 feet of water, and you'd watch these fish come in. You just put minnows down there without a hook. You'd watch these fish come in and just like a vacuum cleaner, just these cutthroats and these brook trout would just suck these minnows in, like, you know, they're minnows like this size on, you know, 18 to 20 inch trout. So it's crazy what they'll eat.
That is actually crazy to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, they think trout, you know, they think bugs and insects and flies. And I will say, you know, some of my biggest cut bow, which is a hybrid between a rainbow and a cutthroat, for those watching that don't know, came on the smaller version of this, which is just a 2-inch called the Trout Attack, and 16-pound fish came in. And, you know, when I used to live in Colorado, you know, a lot of guys use those cubbies or the rat finkies. You know, a lot of the crappie guys, I think, will use I call them those little spider jigs. It's like just a jig head with all those little whiskers, and they're very small. But these trout do eat those small insects, and you'll catch those big fish doing that. But they will also eat, like, if there's something like this available for them to eat, that's less work they got to do down the road, you know?
Yeah. So, excuse me, got to get this in really quick. You know, if anybody has questions or anything like that, you know, definitely go and put that in the comments. And we'll come back to trout really fast. However, to hold on real quick. If somebody is looking for a trip that is other than trout, or do you only do trout trips?
So I do lake trout, salmon. There is a pretty good smallmouth fishery at the gorge. Quite a few, you know, 3.5 to 4.5 pound fish. You will catch a few every year that are just over 5 pounds. But that's predominantly what I do out here. You know, if guys are looking to come out west and, you know, they want to come catch a lake trout and then they want to go catch a 9-foot sturgeon, I have plenty of friends that guide out in Idaho, and they fish for everything in Idaho. I mean, and this kind of blew me away too, is, you know, you can go fish I'm trying to think now, the Columbia River, sorry. And you can catch, you know, I think there's big smallmouth in there they're trying to get rid of, a huge walleye. There's no limit on walleye. Wrap your brain around that. No limit on walleye.
That's crazy.
You know, sturgeon, they do trout trips, but yeah, there's a lot of, you know, we were talking about it before the show. Everybody, you know, thinks of the West, you know, trout fishing and stuff like that, but there's everything you can catch for the most part in the Midwest. You can come out west and catch just the same quality fish. I mean, where I go sturgeon fishing with my buddy Brett, with Jones Sport Fishing, we'll go out and catch, you know, 50 to 100, 150 crappie, because there's no limit on crappie either. And they're, you know, 8 to 10 inch crappie, and you literally cut the crappie head off and go catch a 9-foot sturgeon. So, I mean, it's the West is wild. So, you know, there's in Idaho, it's weird because you can use any game fish as bait. And if there's a creel limit, it counts towards your creel limit. But, you know, where these crappie are, there's no limit because they consider them invasive. And there's white and black crappie, and you'll catch them. It's the easiest crappie fishing you'll ever do. I'm not even joking. Like, Brett, he puts a little piece of yarn on a jig. You drop it down there. You start cranking. You know, you do the little crappie crank, right? And then, there's one. Break it in.
There's one.
Back down. There's no bait. There's nothing. So it's it's a lot of fun.
That is a lot of fun.
That is fun.
So a few more questions here. I know that you have tossed out a few different bait makers and things that you like fishing with. But there's a question if you make your own plastics.
I don't make my own plastics. I have a couple friends that do. There's a couple local guys here in Southwest Wyoming that will make any kind of plastic that you want. CJ Customs, he's the one that came up with this design here. That's really my go-to bait jig and lake trout out here. He also makes the fish, and gigantor here. But yeah, no, I don't make a lot of, we'll rig our own kokanee gear up. It's kind of like, when you buy your walleye rigs, you kind of just rig them up and have them all ready to go. We do the same thing for salmon, but I'm very fortunate that I have a great group of friends that are very diverse. So it definitely makes a difference.
Yeah, that's for sure. And then I know that you were talking about, certainly being respectful to the fish because some of them take so many years to grow. But when you do end up keeping one of them, Tobin was asking how you cook them or if you smoke them or how do you go about that?
Yeah, so typically out here at the gorge, anything 30 inches and under we'll keep. Now you can only keep one, I think, over 28 inches. So I try to stay 28 inches or less. But lake trout, especially out here, they eat a lot of plankton and crayfish, and I mean they do eat other fish too. But a lot of the smaller fish that you're going to smoke or cook are very pink, like salmon or orange. Sorry, not pink, orange. And my favorite way is to actually smoke them. So there's different ways. Now this might sound weird to a couple of people because it sounded weird to me, but my favorite way to cook salmon or lake trout if I'm going to eat them is I'll put some lemon pepper seasoning and then I'll put a layer of mayo on the fish, some more seasoning, and then some people even put Parmesan cheese on top of that. For all you Wisconsin guys out there, you'll probably want to do that. I'm originally from Brussels, so not too far from Green Bay. So I like the cheese as well. But you put that on there and put it, I usually just start a fire or cook it on the grill for about 10 or 15 minutes, and it's actually really good. I'm not a big fish eater, like trout, salmon. I'll eat kokanee salmon, but I won't eat salmon from the Great Lakes. It's a totally different taste, too fishy. And, walleye, crappie, obviously, or you can't go wrong. But we have also out here an endless supply of burbot or eel pout. And there's no limit. There's no limit on those either. So my biggest one I caught out here was just shy of 40 inches and was about 14 pounds.
That's awesome.
So, and I actually caught it on, there's another tube that's kind of like this. It's a 7-inch tube, but it's a fat white one like that. And that's what I caught it on. And it had a 16-inch salmon hanging out of its mouth. It was pretty wild. Yeah. In the middle of the day, everybody fishes for them at night. And I go out in the middle of the day and jigging for lake trout. I'm not gonna lie. I wasn't very happy. That's the first fish I caught breaking in my new rod and reel setup that I had. But yeah, so they have a big burbot bash out here every year. Like I said, there's no limit on burbot right now. Burbot fishing is pretty good. You can go out and catch 100, 200 burbot a night.
Wow,
but not on my boat.
That's funny because out by me, there's only a very specific time frame that they're very targetable. Otherwise, I don't know. I guess they're too scattered in the lake. I have to learn more about them, where they go. But
and it's totally different in the Midwest than it is out here. Because growing up in in Green Bay, January, February was like the time to go catch. We called them lawyers. It was the time to go catch them. But, out here, the best time is, the fall is phenomenal because they don't spawn like other fish. They form like these huge, you'll see like this weird ball in your fish finder. And they just like do this on the bottom. It's very strange.
Yeah, that's really crazy. So this year, one of my goals is to try to catch one, but we'll see. All right. So we do have just a few questions left. But we are running short on time. So we are going to go through a few of these. Okay. How much does jig color make a difference to you?
It does and it doesn't. I know that it's not really a good answer. But I think about how many people are out there using a white tube like this and how many times these lake trout have been caught using a white tube. I think, your whites or your greens like this, that's pretty much, if you're going lake trout fishing with a tube, that's pretty much all you need. I mean, the guys that have come out with me, you'll see where the fish will key into one color more than another. But I always start off with the same ones. And it's just whatever is going to have that better silhouette essentially down there at 100 feet. You lose a lot of colors, and colors look the same the deeper you go. So like pinks and reds, you lose, I think, about 40, 50 feet. You lose to where they're basically invisible to the fish spectrum. So yeah, that's, if I had to tell you, like, hey, one color to go lake trout fishing jigging, white.
Oh, white.
Yeah. I fished a bunch. I fished a bunch of lakes, and white or black. Or white, black, or this green right here is killer.
And then we have somebody asking if you can remind us who makes that tube.
Yeah, so these are CJ Custom lures. So you can look up CJ Custom on Facebook.
And does that color green have a name? Do you know? You showed a green one. Yeah.
No, not that I. Let me look at the package here, but I don't think so. Nope.
That's all right. Scott, if you go and ask for these tubes and say that you saw them from Shane, they might know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Corey will know. He's a very busy guy, so just be patient. He does this as a part-time job, and I believe he has 3 or 4 kids. One is a new one, so
that's awesome. And then, we're going into winter. And so that in itself is super exciting, coming up to ice season and all of that. But you have some really exciting things going on too, after we talked about trips and all of that.
Yeah. So just real quick, I'm going to throw it out there. We didn't get a chance to really talk about lake trout tactics. So, who's ever watching, if they want more information, I'll do a live show on my page, and then we'll go and talk about tactics. So for you guys out there, I don't want you guys to be disappointed, but we are going to be giving away a guided lake trout trip, ice fishing or open water, out here in Wyoming. So if you guys want to get in on this, there's a post on the Recon Angling page where it says comment what you want us to talk about on the live show. All you have to do is comment and like that. You don't even have to share it. Just comment and like that post to be entered to win. So I'm just going to do what I do is I do a random name generator. I put all the names in a spreadsheet. I randomize it 5 times. At the end of the 5th time, who's ever on top wins. So it's a guided lake trout trip for 2 people. If you guys want to have more people, that's fine. It'll cost a little bit of extra money to do that. And it will be a half-day trip. And then you guys will be responsible for all taxes and fees that go to the wonderful Forest Service that keeps everything going for us. So
that's awesome. I'm going to definitely make sure I'm entered, because after the show, I'm really excited for that. So
yeah, this doesn't include airfare or anything like that for guys that are out of the state. It's just
at this point, I would start walking there.
Yeah. So, and what usually starts out as a half day ends up being a full day. So anyway, but yeah,
we'll pack your schedule, people.
Yeah. I used to go live quite a bit, and this year we're guiding. I actually lived down at the lake. I bought a 30-foot camper, and I was living down at the lake. A lot of you guys know, down at Buckboard Marina. It was amazing. Waking up and to dun, 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 as boats drove by. That was my alarm clock in the morning. Boats going down to the ramp. There was a bump right there every time. You'd hear the truck and the trailer. But yeah, and down there I didn't really have a whole lot of service. So some of these guys, mentioned it's been a while, but it has. And that's more of a thank you to all the clients I've had, and then just for the Recon Angling page, I said once we broke over 2,000 likes, we do that. And I think we're well over that now. I think we hit that at the end of last winter. So I'm catching up, but it's out there, now. So make sure you guys go ahead and just follow the directions. It's pretty easy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And can you remind us again, for people who want to follow you, how do we do that?
Yeah. So Instagram is Recon Fisher or Recon Angling, and then Facebook, Recon Angling.
That's awesome. And like you said, that you have, different live feeds that you're doing, and definitely watch those pages because you have some great information that you put out there for people. So, once again, thanks for being here. I feel like we could have talked for like the whole rest of the night still.
Yeah, that's the joy of fishing. It's, you get to talking, and so many people, especially now with COVID, so many people are getting in the outdoors, which is great, and fishing, and it's great conversation. And I just, we need to have more conversations like this where people aren't, going at each other, and just get back to having a good time. That's what it's about.
Fun.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and I know that, depending on your schedule, that's for sure. Like, we'll definitely have you on again because this has been tons of fun.
Mm-hmm, always.
And to the people at home, thank you guys for being here because you guys are half the fun, or the other half the fun.
Yep.
Because we love hearing, your different comments and questions and thoughts and funny little things throughout the show. So, thanks again for being here with us. And as always, looking forward to next week's edition of Hook, Line, and Striker.
Night, everybody.